Hello and welcome to the July 21st PowerShell Community Call, where we get together. Oh boy, I even screwed that up. Where we get together as a community to discuss the care and feeding of PowerShell. I want to welcome everyone to this public conversation, and I, of course, encourage you to join the conversation by chatting in your comments or turning on your microphone and camera and speaking with everyone. Now, to keep the conversation engaging and minimize disruption, please disable your microphone and video when you're not actively participating. And as always, please remember our code of conduct, which, you know what, I'll put a link to it right here in the chat. Essentially, boils down to this: we were made for each other, so let's be friends. Now, with that, we have an action-packed agenda. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Now, it's kind of interesting here is that a couple of days ago, I thought I saw Sydney calmly walk over to the release handle and pull it, but I haven't had a chance to update yet. So Sydney, can you maybe share some insights on what PowerShell 7.3 Preview 6 is all about?
Yes, and I'm actually going to have Steve give that update.
Oh, okay.
We made a last minute
Last
change.
minute.
Yeah. It's all right. So we're continuing to do our monthly preview releases, as well as servicing releases where necessary. I just want to call out maybe a couple of the more interesting fixes that were put in. So, or one of the things, some stuff that we may want to get feedback on in case there's any problems. So, for example, convert from JSON. If you use the hash table switch, it now returns an ordered hash table. So it is a derived type from hash table. So the presumption is that you won't have any compatibility issues with your existing scripts that expect a hash table, but now the elements within it are ordered versus a somewhat random, depending on what the hash ends up being. There was a fix for outgrid view. So previously, because of all the decoration that we've been adding, that would show up in outgrid view, because outgrid view uses the post-formatting content versus the pre-formatting content, because it tries to resemble what you would see in format table. So that's been fixed so that it strips that before it shows up in outgrid view. Looks like there's some changes to new time span. There's a new milliseconds parameter. Set authenticated signature now defaults to SHA-256, which is more secure. There's some tab completion fixes, and I think those are the main. There's also a change for if you're doing get mem, or if you're trying to get the arguments for a .NET method, it will show optional parameters now, where it didn't do that before. I think those are the main things. The only other thing I want to call out, which will show up in the next preview next month, is that there was an experimental feature called PS Native. What was it called? PS Native PS Drive Resolution. I forget. I actually wrote that experimental feature. I can't remember what it's called now, but anyways, it turned out that there were some problems where it was really nearly impossible to determine whether or not the PS Drive path was expected or intended to be literal or resolved. Because what the feature did was that if you provide a PS file path, then you pass it to a native command, then it would actually resolve that path to the actual file path before passing a native command, because native commands do not understand PowerShell paths. And that worked for a number of scenarios. If you have like a temp path, or on Windows, if you use utility, it could reference the home directory, because the operating system itself doesn't understand what utility means. Unfortunately, it caused other problems, because now if a path looks like a path, then it tries to resolve it when it shouldn't have resolved it. And unfortunately, as much as I tried, and I spent probably way too much time on it, it couldn't be fixed. So it's so we're removing that feature all up. So that won't show up anymore in Preview 7 next month. So just be aware of that. I think that's the main things I wanted to cover. Yeah, I think that's it. Unless there's any questions.
Thanks,
if you have questions, put it in the chat window. I'm more than happy to talk or respond to those in the chat window.
Outstanding. You know what, folks? I realized why Sydney didn't want to talk to me earlier was because I didn't have my camera on. Now that that's been fixed, let me try again. Hey, Sydney, do you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on with PowerShell Get?
I would love to.
So
we have been working hard on PowerShell Get 3.0 Preview 15. What this preview adds is an authenticode check parameter, which is similar to a publisher check. And then it adds the script file info commandlets. as well as the update module manifest commandlet. Now, when I added this agenda item, I was hoping, fingers crossed, that we would get to announce that we were releasing it this morning. We found a bug yesterday evening, and so that's been slightly delayed, but we'll hopefully be able to see that early next week. So look forward to that release. From there, we'll move on to Preview 16, what's exciting about Preview 16 is that our focus is on performance for find and install. So I'm really excited about those improvements, and I think that should have a huge impact going forward. And with that, I'll pass things back to you, Jason.
Oh, hey, thanks, Sydney. So, folks, let me just tell you, we're going to release a new commandlet. Now, I'm working on the CI and the release pipelines right now, so it's probably going to officially release with a blog announcement late next week. But you know what? Since you came to the call and it's code complete, I figure, why not? We're going to release it to you now. Now, this is the interesting thing, is that we're going to release a new commandlet called Get What's New. This helps you discover and learn about the new features that are in a PowerShell version beyond the one that you have. Gives you good reason to update, but more importantly, it lets you know what things have been added to empower you for new solutions. And the other interesting thing is that, you see Sean Wheeler around here all the time giving a docs update, but he was the primary contributor for the code for all of this. So I figure, why not? Let's have Sean Wheeler give us a demonstration of the new Get What's New commandlet. Hey, Sean, show us what's going on.
All right, let me share my screen here, and we'll get over to the repo. So out in GitHub /PowerShell/what's new, you can see the code, and there's not a whole lot of magic to this here. Essentially, what we're doing is shipping the release notes as markdown files with the module. So what we've got here, the idea is that this will be published to the gallery. You'll be able to install this on any version of PowerShell 5.1 and up. It's got a few simple parameters. So if you just run Get What's New without any parameters, it shows you what's new. It basically displays the release notes for the version of PowerShell that you're on. So I'm running this in PowerShell 5.1, as you can see. And it shows me everything. So that's a lot to wade through, screen full of text. So let's say I'm more interested in not what's new in the version I'm running, but what's new in 7.3. And so I can specify a version and get just that version. Can also specify multiple versions, and we have release notes from everything from 5.1 up to 7.3. There is a daily switch. So if this is something you wanted to put in your profile as sort of a message of the day kind of thing, it will pick one of the H2 header blocks from the release notes and at random and display that for you. And you can say daily or MOTD for message of the day. But as you can see here, a lot of these things have hyperlinks to further information, and maybe isn't the greatest way to read this and experience this. So if there's something you see that piques your interest, you can always go online, and it launches the browser for that version of the documentation. And if you're a real sadist and you want to see just everything, that output, all the contents for all versions. This might be useful to search for a specific thing if you're trying to find what version it was released in. So that is Get What's New.
Now, Sean, let me just understand, the repo is now open for comments and suggestions and PRs and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So folks, yeah, go ahead
ahead.
and give us some feedback on this. As Sean pointed out, we're essentially right now with this commandlet just taking what we have on the web and providing it to you so you have local, and also so that you can get a message of the day, let you kind of from day to day, let you know some of the new things that you might be interested in. So feel free to come out and give us some comments and feedback on this, on what you'd like to see going forward. And with that, you know what, Sean? I don't think I'm done with you yet. I think you're also going switch the hat back over and go back to being a documentarian and give us a docs update.
Yeah, so we saw a lot of this, I think, last month. I talked about new documentation we released in June. We converted some items that were in our GitHub wiki that didn't have a good landing place, and those are now published in docs here. Lots of new content for secrets management. And we had some releases that we updated documentation for, including PS readline. You want to talk about that real quick?
Thanks for kind of reminding me about this. So just in case you didn't notice, we posted a blog, oh man, was it almost 2 months ago? It was after the last community call. I don't think I've talked about this at a community call, but we released PS readline 2.2.6. And what is so special about this release is that it turns on predictors by default. And I noticed a question in the chat as well about predictors, and I'll get to that. So check out this blog post. So by default, history and plugins will be enabled for 7.2 and above by default. If you're on Windows PowerShell 5.1, we support history-based predictors, and those will be enabled by default on PowerShell 5.1. The blog will also show you that if you would like to disable your predictors, you'll be able to turn them on, turn them off, and change the colors, the basics to get started with it. But yay, predictors are now enabled by default. And there was a question let me see if I can get this answer correct. There was a question in the chat regarding predictors, and is there work going on predictors? Yes, there is lots of work going on predictors. However, I think maybe the repo you're looking at might be the PowerShell completer. That's an experiment, and we're kind of looking for everybody to give us feedback, just like we are on the Get What's New commandlet. If you want to come into that repo on the PowerShell completer and give us some feedback, we'll take a look at that feedback, and we'll take a look at some future plans for that. Other than that, we are working on other things for predictors and so forth, and we don't have anything to announce today, but we look forward to having more conversations about the predictors in the future. Sean, what else you got?
Well, to help that out, this is a preview rendering of the docs I'm working on right now. These will be published in the next week or so. We got to realizing that we haven't done a great job of documenting the shell. We document the PowerShell language a lot, but don't talk about the shell so much. So we're creating some new documentation here about optimizing your experience, user experience in the shell, including talking about tab completions, all the different ways that you can get tab completion, and specifically talking about predictors and how to manage them. This talks about the changes in PowerShell 2.2.6. So there's a few things to note here about PowerShell 2.2.6. It will turn on predictors automatically based on certain conditions. So this is all documented here. And then at the end here, we talk about the predictor plugins that are available. Of course, there's the AZ Tools predictor that Damien Caro's team has produced, and the new completion predictor. That's the prototype that Jason was mentioning. What this does, this doesn't actually add any new predictions to PowerShell. This this gives you the same information you get from tab completion, but when you're in list view mode, you get that IntelliSense experience that you used to only be able to get in your editor like VS Code. So that's the real purpose of the completion predictor. So stay tuned. There's more good content coming this month. Hope to have it in before the end of the month. And that's my docs update.
Hey, man, thanks for all the docs work. Appreciate it. Now we're going to move on to a topic. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but PowerShell module paths. Mr. Green, are you aboard this morning?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, so we have a couple of interesting issues that we've created out in the PowerShell repo. One that we didn't add to the agenda, but feel free to go take a look at, is an issue I created for whether to include the secrets management and secret store modules when we release PowerShell. That's one I would love to have some discussion today. If you want to talk about that, just drop a note in the chat with your opinions, and we'll start to drill in, or you can take the floor and talk about it. The other major one, or obviously you can also just go out to the issue in GitHub and comment on it directly. There's actually quite a bit of chatter yesterday with a lot of people who were super excited about the idea of including secrets management by default. But the one we do have on the agenda for today, so some of you may have noticed, if you're on a Windows machine especially, and if you're using the sort of like enterprise edition of OneDrive, it is synchronizing the documents folder to the cloud, so that all those files are backed up. And right now, if you install a module into the user scope, we create a folder under your documents path that is, your home path / documents / PowerShell / modules. The problem is, if you're installing a lot of modules, they're all getting synchronized up to your cloud drive, and that obviously is going to eat up a lot of your available storage. Not to mention, you might not actually want to roam all of your PowerShell modules between machines. So it could even be like an undesired behavior. So something that the PowerShell community actually suggested a while back that we're taking a fresh look at is, should we change where the user scope for PowerShell modules is installed by default? And there's really two main impacts here. One is for PowerShell Get. When we install a module, where do we install it to? The second is for PS module path. Which folders are we including, so that we kind of like which modules will kind of get loaded as they're needed, get imported as they're needed into your current session. And then we kind of have the issue of, how do we change from the way we're doing it now to this new way? And the committee talked about it at length, and we think like PowerShell Get v3, the command names totally change. So it's a good opportunity to introduce a significant and/or breaking change such as this, to have install PS resource start pointing to a new path. And then, there's the question of whether or not we would want PowerShell Get v2 to adopt the same change, or just kind of leave it the way it is. And then for PS module path, in an upcoming version of PowerShell, we could just go ahead and add the new path to the existing PS module path. And then there's the question of, when or even if in the future we would retire the old path. And then Steve has got some good comments out there about, in order to enhance this behavior, we could introduce a new API so that applications could query and see what is the default or what is the current PS module path, and where is the best place to make the install. So just one more point of clarity, the path that the community proposed, which I think is really smart, is instead of putting it in the documents folder, we could put it under your user profile. So the home path environment variable / app data / local, meaning if you're using something like roaming profiles, it would not get roamed across machines. So app data, local, and then PowerShell / modules. So if anybody would like to brainstorm about that today, I would welcome the discussion.
Thanks, Michael. Now I'm checking my agenda, and I just want to confirm with everybody, are we still postponing Doug Fink's what looks to be awesome conversation on OpenAI. Yeah, still postponed, still postponed. Okay.
Yeah, he
We'll go
had a
with it.
conflict, unfortunately. So hopefully next month.
Oh boy, looking forward to that. So with that, we'll go ahead and move up to some updates on the archive module. And Abdullah, would you like to talk to us about the archive module you've been working on?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. I'm working on the archive module rewrite project. So currently an RFC was published. You'll see the link in the chat. So an RFC was published for the archive module. The RFC includes new scenarios such as supporting multiple archive formats, such as tar and tar.gz, preserving the relative path structure, support for flattening the archive, and more features. Comments for the RFC are due on August 6th, so please make sure to add comments by that date. So it's coming up in a few weeks. We're planning on releasing a preview of the archive module soon, so hopefully we can get that out today. So please look forward to that. The preview includes a subset of the features that we're planning on releasing in the version 2.0.0 release. The preview includes the compress archive commandlet. It doesn't have the expand archive commandlet, and we expect to add that commandlet in a future preview. So it has support for creating, updating, and overriding a zip archive.
Is that it, Abdullah?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, well, thanks so much for the archive update. I've been looking forward to this, handling different file types and so forth. So with that, let's go ahead and talk to Sarah about the VS Code walkthrough update. Hey, Sarah. I think you're on mute.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Perfect. So just to remind you all, I'm working on the PowerShell walkthrough extension for VS Code, and I'm going to link the issue in the chat. But we're really excited to make the PowerShell extension a little bit more user-friendly for beginners and also allow people to really connect with their resources. So I'll show you guys a little sample of what we have going. Second. All right, so are you guys seeing this?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So we have the option to set PowerShell as your default language, followed by choosing a version of PowerShell, kind of encouraging people to try PowerShell 7. And then we also give the option to use ISC mode because we know some people really like that default, as well as setting PowerShell as the default shell. And then lastly, we allow the user to open the PowerShell terminal and then create a PowerShell file. And we also connect them with resources, so documentation, general information, and connecting them to the community as well. So we're really excited to get this going soon. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Sarah. That's great. Very excited about that. And oh, hey, it's back to me now for so I think Mike Kanakis is hanging out on a beach somewhere. And so he messaged me from that beach with a community update. So I'm going to give you the community update. And I'll be honest with you, probably the easiest way for me to do this is to drop it into chat and just point out a couple of highlights. So let me go ahead and try to attempt to do that. So Mike has sent over some interesting dates for August coming up as far as community updates. Places for you to hang out and have conversations about PowerShell. There's the August 3rd user group update on getting started with Azure Bicep. Also on August 18th, there's PipeScript. I noticed James Brunage, ooh, converting to Python. That sounds really interesting. Also, he points out the blogs, but what I'll let you guys read through this. I just want to really highlight out that if you were planning on going to PowerShell on the River, that event has been canceled due to, it's not COVID, it's COVID. Some requirements that they had at the venue. And also, just as a reminder, and I've checked out this podcast myself. I don't know if you've checked it out or not, but a PowerShell podcast. Andrew Plott and Jordan Hammond have been doing a great job on this podcast. And so not only is it a community effort to give that podcast a listen, give them some feedback, maybe even give them some ideas of new topics that maybe you want to talk about, but check out that great podcast and show some support and love for the work that they're doing down there.
And our own
so take
our own Mike Robbins will be on an episode of that podcast soon.
Oh, what's he? Do you know what he's going to talk about?
Not exactly. Mostly community stuff, though, I think.
Okay, cool. So see, check out that podcast. There's all kinds of interesting things going on. And with that, we've got a great demo. Well, I don't know if it's a great demo or not, but it's Justin Grody, and he usually does great demos. Yeah, somebody's yelling.
Real quick, there was
Steven.
sorry about that. I just wanted to make a quick and last minute announcement before we get into some demos about the Microsoft updates around the previews. So yesterday we had an issue with the preview 5 moo going out. So if basically we had to revert preview. If you're subscribed to Microsoft updates on preview 6, you'll not get automatically updated if you are on preview 5 to 6. You will get updated if you are on preview 4. It would actually just jump you to 6. We're still investigating exactly what happened with preview 5, but if you are on 7.3 preview 5, you will have to manually update to preview 6, and then after that, moo updates should be smooth after that. But just wanted to make that quick announcement. So.
Oh, great. Thanks, Steven. So let me see if I got this straight. If I'm on preview 5, I need to manually
make a
update.
correction.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Travis.
No, you will be updated from preview 5. You just won't be updated to preview 5. The issue with the update doesn't affect the ability to upgrade both of them.
Okay, so if you're on 5, you're going to be upgraded fine. If you're prior to 5, you have to manually upgrade?
No manual upgrade should be required. It's just we won't upgrade you to preview 5. There was a problem with the release process then.
Gotcha. So no upgrades to preview 5, but everything else will continue on to preview 6 and 7.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks for jumping in. And let me just ask this before we go to demos, and just so that everybody knows, we'll also be answering questions from the chat and from the RFC issue posted in PowerShell RFC after the demos. Is there anyone else on the team that has something they'd like to jump in and say before we go to the infamous Justin Grody? Pausing once, pausing twice. I know he's like, all right, Justin, it's all up to you. Take it away.
Thanks, Jason, I think. So again, hi, I'm Justin Grody. I'm just a Microsoft PowerShell MVP, and I've just been working on a little side thing. I'm really a big fan of dev containers and GitHub code spaces. If you're not familiar with them, dev containers are basically a way to define an environment that's sort of like pre-built for anything you want to do. So like one of the challenging things a lot of the time when you want to start contributing to something or you get involved is, getting your dev environment set up. Sometimes you got to like install .NET. You don't know what version of .NET you need to install. Maybe you need certain special esoteric requirements that are required for the project. Maybe there's certain settings that are more helpful. And, getting set up with that friction caused a lot of people to give up. Definitely, for me, like even the first days I was trying to contribute to PowerShell, just trying to get the first build script to work, was always very, very frustrating. So I've been trying to look at a way that can sort of be mitigated. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Oh, actually, can you give me presenter rights, please?
I think so. I'm working on it. Sorry.
No worries. So what Codespaces does, and basically what dev containers do is allow this. And so there's also this feature called Codespaces, which is new in GitHub, but basically allows you to run these Codespaces, but basically run them in your browser. They actually run on the back end in GitHub's data centers. But let's see, whoops, that's the wrong one. Switch to the up screen. So here I have the PR, which I'll put in chat. I'll get my windows rearranged here a little bit. So this is the pull request that I'm working on to do this. And so it comes from my copy of the PowerShell repository. And so you have this branch. And so once this gets merged or it's available or anything like that, you'll be able to go over here to this code button and click this button, create code space. So if you want to contribute to PowerShell, having nothing else but a GitHub account, you'll simply be able to click this button. And once you click this button, what it ends up doing in the background is it starts spinning up this dev container. So and this is different than if you've ever used GitHub where you hit the little period key and you get that sort of web editor. That's really nice, and it works with C# really well for like finding references and whatnot, but you can't actually build anything. You can only just sort of, it's more like a text editor. This is actually giving you a full virtual machine in the background that can run everything you need to do as if you were running locally. And so you can see here, it's gone and fetched my image, and now it's doing some extra build steps. There's certain things about the PowerShell module, like it changes its .NET version very often for the preview builds that have to be done. I'm going to do some things like I'm going to do some pre-restoration of the requirements so that builds happen faster. And a lot of those steps today just get done at this point. It'll take about 90 seconds to come up. But in the future, there was this feature that hopefully can be added to the PowerShell repository called Codespace's pre-builds, where it'll basically do all these steps ahead of time and then just fetch you the results very quickly. So while that's building, you can see here it's going, it's creating the container, it's running my little update commands, and you can kind of see that there's this dev container folder, which exists today, but I've gone through and simplified it. And of course, because we are PowerShell, all of the build scripts are PowerShell scripts. So the on, create, etc., the steps, and these are steps taken directly out of the reference. That is, excuse me, I have the other reference, but if you go to the reference for how you build PowerShell on Linux, these steps are pretty much taken directly from that in terms of you import the build module, you do a clean, and then you start up the bootstrap. So that process is all occurring, and you see, there we go. So now it's done. And I have here in my web browser a full version, but unlike the one that you typically get where you hit the period, I have PowerShell right here. And so I have my PS version table. As you can see there, it always says up top. So this is the PowerShell that comes with it. And this is a fresh image. I'm trying to make this so that it doesn't give you a lot of opinions in terms of like color themes or fonts or where the sidebar and stuff can go. And your own personal settings, I have the settings sync disabled for this, but if you were to log into this, your own personal settings would show up immediately. So you'd have your personal theme, where you like your sidebar, where you like your stuff laying around and all that. But right off the bat, you have visibility here into all the different pull requests and issues that exist. And you can go to any of these, check them out, and work on them. Again, right from the beginning, just opening it, you're here and you're already able to contribute to PowerShell. But even better is if you want to run and debug PowerShell, all you got to do is go to the run menu and click the run, or just hit F5 to start debugging. And so when you do this, it's going to go ahead. I've made a custom VS Code task that will go ahead and again follow the same procedure that's in the build documentation to go ahead and build PowerShell from scratch, from the source, to give you your version of PowerShell based on the source code that you have in your folder. So where this is useful is if you're going through and you're making changes, we can look in an example module, like I'm going to use the symbol search, which is nice. Rather than have to search through the file system to find it, I can just do this pound, and I want get unique command. And it may not find it because it's probably still indexing everything, so I'll probably have to go fetch it directly, but that should be under utility, I believe. But where's get unique? There it is. Get uptime, excuse me, is what I wanted. So while this is building down here, here's an example of like what a PowerShell command looks like at the C# level. And don't worry if you don't read C#, but some of this stuff should look kind of similar to a function. You have like a commandlet binding, you can set output type, and you have parameters, and then you have a process block, and that process block does something. So if I want to test this, you see down here it's still running in my little VS Code thing. It's probably doing the analysis at the same time, so it's going to be a little bit slow. The nice thing about this is that once you build your code spaces once, it's there. So all this sort of initial pre-build stuff will already be there, and this will usually be pretty quick. But this is just a demo that I'm showing that right off the bat, I don't even have to have VS Code installed. It's just, you can just open a web browser, click that create code space, and here you are as a PowerShell dev, just like that. So while that gets done building here, it's just restoring and going through the build process. PowerShell is a big project, so the build can take a while, even on this 4-core machine. I can probably cancel the analysis, but I could also do a top to show that process. So you can see .NET's working really, really hard here, doing both the analysis and the build. But while that's going, I can go here and say, for instance, I'm working on this code, like, hey, I think there's something weird about this. Like maybe I want to make sure that the timestamp's working. So I can go ahead and set a breakpoint here. And it looks like it's almost done building. It's now just going through the final build stuff. And so once this task completes, it's going to go ahead and open up a PowerShell, but also start the debug process. So there's my PowerShell. And down here in the debug, okay, now I have a debug console. and I have my terminal. And just for ease, I'm going to take my debug console and put it next to my terminal so I can kind of side by side this. So right here, this PowerShell is the PowerShell that I just built. This is my version of PowerShell. So I have, if I do PS home, you'll see it's living in the PowerShell, this folder, this debug. So if I go up here to debug, this is the PowerShell that I just built. And this is just as good as any PowerShell that you download from Microsoft. This can be your own version of PowerShell. If you don't like this logo, you can change it, build it, and boom, you've got your own version of PowerShell. But now that I have this, I can set a breakpoint here. And because now this is basically watching what's going on, I can do get uptime. And when I do that, it's going to break right when it gets to that point of that process. So when I ran get uptime, here I am in the PowerShell C# code, and I can see exactly how this command works. I can check the uptime. Okay, there's the object. Everything looks good. I can set breakpoints. I can see the call stack for how I got here from just typing get command. You know, I can follow back through the code to find, okay, this, then this, and this, and invoke, and then the pipeline and all that crazy stuff to get to where this actually runs. And then if I get back to my code, I can actually see the details and where I'm at, you know, watch variables if I want, and make changes. And so you can do all that, make changes, and then once you're done, just using the extensions here, you can just simply file a new pull request. You can do a new pull request and go ahead, excuse me, I think it's pull request, there we go. So you can go ahead and create a new pull request, check out the branch, and do a pull request and do it all from your browser. You don't have to have PowerShell installed. You don't have to have Visual Studio installed. You don't have to have anything installed. And there's even this thing where you can do what's called a progressive web app, where you can do this install, and it will no longer run in your browser, but actually run on your desktop. Now, I don't have VS Code. In this case, like, you don't even have to have VS Code installed, but this sure looks like it's running on my desktop, doesn't it? When really it's still running in Edge, but it's still all the sort of nice aspects of that like I would do, and I have it locally. And this works. This can work on an iPad. This can work on even computers that don't even run, you know, that don't even support PowerShell, because all of this in the back end is running inside a CodeSpaces virtual machine in GitHub. So today, for this to work, you have to be part of the CodeSpaces beta. CodeSpaces is now also GA, so if you want to do this kind of stuff as part of an organization and pay for the CodeSpaces time, you can do that. There's some stuff going on inside GitHub where they're talking about how to make this more community friendly. I've been involved in some of those conversations, and I hope they have some exciting news to announce in terms of that. But yeah, that's what I've been working on, and hopefully this will make it so that if you've ever wanted to fiddle with PowerShell, maybe make your own version of PowerShell and fix things or prototype some things beyond just simply working with the PowerShell code itself, but actually diving into the C# of it, this is a great alternative. And I have a version of this too that's also going to be for just making regular PowerShell modules in PowerShell, you know, in general. So that's a separate thing. So thanks very much.
Wow, Justin, you had me at, you can run this on your iPad. That's awesome, man. Great, folks. So now we're going to open it up for questions. Please feel free to chat in your questions, that kind of thing. You can also go to the PowerShell RFC repo and put your questions into the issue that Sydney has created. And I'm going to grab the first issue that I see out of there from, and please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name, from Amiz. This issue is 17067. Basically, folks, I'm not going to bring it up on my screen. I'm just going to talk about this for a second. This issue is around update help. And you probably have noticed when you run update help, you may have some red text at the bottom telling you that there are some modules that you can't update. In particular, I want to point out that this issue is specific around a few modules, including PS readline. In that issue, Dongbo points to a solution that Sean had posted on our team blog for PS readline. It's because the capitalization of the L is incorrect. So there is a workaround for PS readline. Now, for the other modules, there's a handful of other modules out there that you may notice haven't been updated. And let me tell you why these modules haven't been updated and why you keep seeing red text on it. It's because the owners of those modules no longer exist. Those modules might exist, but the people that can edit and control the help files for those, and those help files are gone, and they may never come back. Now, that's been an issue with update help for some time, and what that means is that every time you run update help, you get these error messages at the bottom of your screen, and we realize that that is irritating. We don't have a workaround for those today, but we are actively discussing ways that we can fix that. And so we hope to have some more information in the upcoming future about how we'll address that, but we are very well aware of it, and it pains us too, and we're working on a fix for it. And with that, oh, there's a Kevin Marquette issue in there, and I don't know, Steve, somebody can take a look at this one?
Yeah, that one was already fixed. Let me check to see
Okay.
if it's in this preview or maybe in the next one. Unless someone can just tell me if they've already tried it. Let me just see when it was merged. It was merged. When was this merged? 3 days ago. So I think it just missed the last preview. So it'll show up in the next preview, I believe.
Well, that's awesome, Kevin. Look for the next preview, and that should be fixed.
And just to give a summary of what this issue is, it's really if you're using a non-concise view for error view, you lose the colors. So this fixes that back.
Outstanding.
It's like the thing I find interesting is that no one complained about it till recently, so that's kind of a good news. But I understand some people may have a need to check the old stuff.
Yeah, I was so happy with concise view, Steve. I never flipped it out of it. So
That's why I never saw it either.
So I think there was a thing. I think
ahead,
another
Justin.
aspect of that though was also being able to contribute your own custom error views so that you could define, like for instance, for me, there's some that are too narrow where I want a little bit more information, like the particular error and the stack trace, so that I can use that when I'm developing a module. But there's some that are like, get error is great, but it scrolls off the screen the stuff that I need sometimes. So like being able to find my own error view, would be a great option. And that's kind of tricky now because it's an enum today, but there could be an additional enum option that's just custom view that would then let you then specify it somewhere else. I mean, it's just an idea. I just see Kevin's on, so I'll let him speak more.
Yeah, some of that was user error, like I was polishing a dev experience for a team, and I was running errors in the shell, and the concise view looks different from just shell errors versus script errors, right? So I was kind of not seeing what I expected to see it out of it anyways. But the customization, I do see quite often, like every time I got like a special script that's catching an error, we're always putting something special, right? Like sometimes it's a get error, dump, but I see that customized a lot in scripts. Like, all right, I catch the error. What do I want to do so it gets bubbled up to be seen? How does that look? So that's kind of where I was, I suppose, prodding down that path of is there more generic ways? All right, here's how we can define our own just error handling.
All right, let me respond to that real quick. So technically, you can have your own custom error view by clobbering the format data for the error record. So I mean, I'm not saying this is a good solution, okay? But technically you can overwrite all the formatting in PowerShell yourself, right? But if you look in the code, concise view, there's a lot of PowerShell script to make it do what it does. But you're free to, of course, manipulate that yourself for your own needs. If you have like a specific scenario where there is like important information that should be bubbled up in concise view, I think that's a different interesting discussion that we can talk about to see if it makes sense to bubble that up or not, right? And how to do that. And then there's another point Justin had brought up. I just lost it. Concise view. I'll think of it later, probably. Dang it, I should have wrote it down. Okay, anyways, I think there's some interesting discussions about needing custom stuff, then open an issue, but extending the enum is not going to be easy to make extensible without a ton of work. Yeah, if it's like get error view dash view and then a name and then that points to something else, like something like that could be done as an extensibility point. But anyways, we can always talk about it as an issue if someone cares enough. Open an issue.
Explored concise view closer. I feel like it's probably going to cover most of my scenarios. Like I said, it is. So yeah, you guys have done a pretty good job with that. Yeah, thank you.
It would always be helpful though if anyone wants to proceed with open initiative and have a discussion, like if you can provide the real world scenario to explain the importance of it, that always helps prioritize. If it's I'm not saying this is the case for you, Kevin, but like I see a lot of discussions that have very academic examples, and it's like, yeah, technically we see that's a problem, but how much do we actually care? Because we don't understand how this actually impacts customers.
In the PowerShell RFC, I'm not seeing many questions that haven't already been answered, but there is one that I've noticed that I'd like to just comment on from Ilya. And this was a comment saying, thanks for making Monday a community day. Next suggestion is to add a community day a year at least. I'm not fully sure. Well, let me just say this. We have a community day, which is an opportunity for the PMs and the engineers to sit down together basically all day long and work on issues. Now we have over 100 repos that we're responsible for. And so there's a lot of work that goes out there. And so if you're in a particular repo, you may not see a whole lot of movement that particular week. But here's what I wanted to emphasize. We do a community day every single week now. And so every week we're taking a day with the engineers and the PMs to work on issues. We hope you notice that impact. And we hope that that's helping move things along as we're getting through that. And so thank you for the support on Community Day. We enjoy it and we're going to keep doing it. So thank you.
Hey, Jason, I just remember what Justin brought up. So he was talking about when you do get errors sometimes, because it does recursively try to get as much information as possible. Sometimes it scrolls off the screen, right? And in many cases, your terminal has a scroll bar, so you can use that. But there are cases where you may not have that luxury or what. So what I'm wondering is, again, what I'm recommending is, like, if people care about this open-end issue, does it make sense to have let's call it a preference in PowerShell where there's an auto paging whenever it detects content is going to scroll off the screen? Like, I can see how that could be annoying, but I can also see how that could be useful. So that would be beyond just error view. Like, anytime content scrolls, maybe it just pages. But it has to be opt-in probably. So
cool. Any other questions that I've missed that I haven't seen? Does anybody want to? We've got a few minutes left, so if you'd like to.
Okay, so there was a discussion on the RFC issue with, it looks like ELE 101. And maybe I'll just put this out to the community. I think what they want or is asking for is if there are some best practices or a commandlet or resources to just generate a PowerShell module skeleton for a script module, because I originally thought he was talking about C#. I would think that I would be surprised if that didn't already exist in the community.
Somebody help me. Is it Plaster? Yeah, Plaster.
Yeah. I was hoping you wouldn't bring up Plaster. I don't know what the state of that project is right now. And
I
can share a couple of things on that. That might be helpful.
Oh, yeah, go, Justin.
So so as far as like starting a new project, there's Plaster, and there's also I got all this crap here. There's Plaster. I got something that's actually I've been working on that I kind of dovetailed for a second to work on the dev container. But I've been working on the thing that I call Mortar, which is sort of a spiritual successor to Plaster. And the idea behind Mortar is it actually uses the same .NET templating engine that .NET New uses. So you can write your templates using the same styles that are known for that. In fact, like, existing PowerShell modules have already been written there for like C# version. But what this does is that you can actually write them as, like, I have a simple module that shows an example where you just have this and you put in the information, a simple module with manifest, or like a full-fledged PowerShell module with all the details and everything. And then when you write these, with the public and private, these sort of styles, and when you write these, they have a template config that has all the details and parameters that you file for those. And then there's simply commands. This is all tied into the .NET templating engine, so a lot of the really fancy stuff happens in this piece, which don't worry about what this does, but this basically ties it into that .NET templating engine so that it can deploy them the same way. But you can simply just do a new Mortar template. And also, I have a way to fetch templates from the PowerShell gallery, sort of the same way that Secret Management does it in terms of looking for a particular tag. So stay tuned on that. But in addition to this, there's build tools for PowerShell scripts that have sort of good guidances. So one of which is a community module called Stucco. I probably got to do PowerShell Stucco. It's kind of generally the one that I would recommend. There's also PowerShell Build, which is also a great one. So here's Stucco, which is this one is sort of tied into Plaster, but it's sort of an optimized version for Plaster. There is PowerShell Build, which has another option for there. And then there's mine, which is sort of dovetails with the Mortar, which is I call Press. And so this is not user-friendly right now. Like, this is pretty much my build system, and it's heavily integrated into GitHub Actions, and it does all kinds of really pretty stuff and does all these little trees and stuff, but it's not easy to get started with right now. I'm working on adjusting that. But so those are areas to sort of like stay tuned on that. It is always like a very common thing that comes up. And one of those things in tooling that I've always wanted to see be better in the community. But generally, yeah, your options are plaster and some opinionated templates like stucco, and then tools like PowerShell build and press if you want to try to figure it out. I barely even understand how it works anymore. To sort of build modules. So those are some options to get started. Probably a more involved conversation than we can do right now, but you know, maybe we can do that at our time.
Cool. I should have known that you'd probably have a solution.
Plaster, stucco, mortar, press. I need a construction outfit, but that's awesome, Justin. That's great.
Yeah, who's gonna write drywall?
Spackle, drywall.
Yeah.
We have some other words out there. So I'm going through looking for questions. If somebody wants to bring something up, we've got a few minutes left to have a conversation.
Actually, on the thought of templates, it might not be bad to get like an official script template into the .NET standard templates and kind of promote to that dev community, like doing CLIs. Like I kind of find there's this disconnect between the C# devs wanting to do C# CLIs and not wanting anything to do with PowerShell, and there could be some like tie-ins to like target that community a bit more.
So there is a .NET new PS module that exists for that purpose. That's for building cross-platform ones. I don't know if that's what you're thinking of.
I was thinking just having. I mean, I guess that'd be. Yeah, I guess that's perfect.
Yeah, that's the one that Tyler wrote a long time back, targeting PowerShell standards specifically. But yeah, so .NET CLI should discover that, I believe, automatically. It's published on NuGet.
I don't think it's automatic. You have to do
Is
the
it not?
.NET new -I to install the template,
Oh, you have to
but then
install it,
after
okay.
that you can get it. But it's not part of like the built-ins. It's not like with like ASP.NET and all that.
That'd be a harder bridge to cross, I think.
Yeah, I put a link that basically describes all that. That's the official documentation, and it walks through installing that template and using it.
Awesome. Anybody else? Any other questions? Anything that we can answer while we're here? We're getting pretty close to time. We've got a few minutes left. And I'll pause for a minute. If there are no more other questions, we'll close the session out. Sounds good. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this month's community call. We look forward to seeing you next month. Have a great month.